You have one fatal flaw.
Oh, I want to hear it.
No, you don't. You can't take criticism.
Try me.
Can't take it.
What's my flaw?
Your temper. It gets the best of you. Makes you weak. Makes you vulnerable.
Oh, crap.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about Hellboy II, The Golden Army. I think people have stopped talking about this movie.
Sure. Is this one a genuine comic book movie Oblivion film?
I think so.
It's in a... yeah.
Pause the podcast.
Nope.
I agree.
Nope.
I think I can probably go through the plot of this, and I actually had more trouble parsing the plot of this one than the first one.
I completely agree, and that's something we should absolutely talk about when we get to
So even if we spoil it, we may not be spoiling it correctly, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
So this one was not based on a comic. It was a news story cooked up by Guillermo Del Toro and Mike Mignola, the creator of Hellboy.
That's correct. Does it really count as a comic book movie then? I think it does.
I think it does.
Of course it does.
I mean, we've
done any number of films that are inspired by the comic. Well, Red Rider most recently.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll get to like Lego Batman at some stage, I imagine. And that's like, there's definitely no source material for that one. But we did read The Conqueror Worm, which I believe is now volume 5 in the Hellboy library.
It's still fairly early on. I think it came out in 2003.
It came out in 2002, 2003, has an introduction in there by Guillermo Del Toro.
And it does.
Before the first movie came out.
That's so.
And he talks about how he's written a script and talked about it with Mike Mignola and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I found that was a bit more interesting even than trying to compare what's in the material that's in the comic, because when I went online and was like, does Golden Army pull from any comics? And some people were like, well, maybe Conqueror Worm, because that's when he quits the BPRD at the end.
There are some very superficial similarities like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I was reading through it as well and thinking, now why did Kumar pick this one?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. This was like Reddit information.
Yes, absolutely. And there is a certain, I mean, as you say, Hellboy retires from the BPRD at the end. That's more or less how the film ends.
Yeah.
There's an Angel of Death in both.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
I didn't even manner of speaking. Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. The character of Johann Strauss shows up right after this in Hellboy chronology, because he comes in BPRD Hollow Earth, which was
It's Johann Kraus.
Oh, what did I say?
Strauss.
I'm going to make that mistake more than once. That's not the first time I'll make that mistake, so I'm not going to bother rewinding and fixing that. So, Kraus comes in a series called BPRD Hollow Earth. And he's brought in as a replacement for Hellboy, because Hellboy's left the team.
That's right.
And at that stage, also, Liz is gone, and Abe is thinking about quitting as well in that series. So that kind of is a little bit after this. And some of those things are kind of squint, and you can see maybe where they got some ideas in the movie. I mean, just the fact of Kraus being in it at all, but much like Abe, very different from the comic book version.
Hugely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. To the point of caricature, really.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm waiting to see what you think about that.
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to unpack how I feel about that.
Okay. So
we can talk a bit of... Oh, sorry, go on.
We don't have to talk much about this comic, but I did note in the introduction there are some interesting things that Guillermo Del Toro says, like, he says Mignola's hyper-expressionistic lighting is almost impossible to reproduce in a 3D world.
Yes, I noted that too.
Which is great.
Almost impossible.
Yes. He describes the irritating simplicity of the art style. And he said, in discussing the characters with Mike, this was when he had written the script, or was writing the script for part 1, I suggested that their fascinating, comforting immutability would need to yield to a more three-dimensional dramatic approach. In addition, a complete self-contained screen drama would need to tie things up a bit more in the end. I agree with those sentiments, but it does make me question when, especially in this one, Golden Army. As we mentioned last week, the Hellboy mythology has become so gigantic. It seems like a character you wouldn't want to put on screen because there's like, well, we need 10 movies to tell the story of this guy's birth in hell and all this stuff and his role in the apocalypse and to do a movie that's not even based on one of the books, but it's just whole cloth created, and then try to suggest that yes, this bigger mythology is still happening seems kind of crazy to me. Is that vague? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. I feel like you could describing a lot of comic book characters there, though. I mean,
I'm not sure. I think
by the 21st century, what could be more complex than the backstory of various Marvel and DC superheroes?
That's kind of true.
They're colossal and sprawling. I think, but you need, as Del Toro implies, you need a kind of economy of storytelling. Choose which things you want to bring in. It's a challenge for adaptation, which is one of the reasons why we do this podcast.
Yes,
I suppose
it is. Yeah.
And has he done it successfully with Golden Army?
Yes. So we'll talk about the comic a little bit. We won't go into it too much because it, as you said, it's not really related to the movie. I did like the dedication in this one from Mike Mignola, which is for Doc Savage, The Shadow, The Spider, G8, and the men who wrote them, and for the original 11.5-inch G.I. Joe. And this one, last week when you were talking about the pulp origins of Hellboy, I was like, yeah, that's kind of there. But this one, it's really front and center.
This is one of my favourite Hellboy stories.
Yeah.
I just love it.
Because this character shows up called
Lobster Johnson.
Lobster Johnson, who is a pulp character who is thought to be fictional. Much like Hellboy is thought to be fictional in the first Hellboy movie, and there's comic books about him and stuff, but people are like, well, he's not a real thing. Hellboy believes that Lobster Johnson is real.
Hellboy believes he's real, but his own superior in the BPRD doesn't believe him real and says that he was just a character that was immortalized by certain low-budget movie serials of questionable quality.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And that amused me because we've done a few of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one is also kind of a sequel, much like Wake the Devil. We're still kind of in the storyline of Rasputin and his minions a bit.
Yeah, Rasputin much.
The Jarhead,
like
Herman von Klempt. The Jarhead is now like the main villain of this one. He's got himself a body of sorts.
Yes. And so Herman von Klempt shows up in Wake the Devil, does he?
Yes.
Where
he's been recovered by Zinko, that human minion that's been hypnotized or whatever into obeying Rasputin, and he's recovered Klempt's head from South Africa and brought him to Cronin.
Yes. And Cronin and Ilsa and Klaus, I think his name is the short bloke. Yeah. But this isn't even in the comic we're talking about.
No. So anyway, he's the main villain of this one. But this one's got, besides Lobster Johnson, who is kind of he's like that Doc Savage type, or the Shadow, or DC Sandman character. He wears a mask like that. Or he looks like a pilot, kind of like a World War I pilot, kind of.
Sort of. He's wearing a form-fitting sort of leather mask and goggles.
But this one's got like Nazi gorillas in it.
It's amazing. And he's... Nazi gorillas. The Kriegaf.
Yes.
And I love Lobster Johnson. He's so ridiculous.
Yeah.
He screams about when he attacks evil. First of all, he yells a lot about justice, but he also tells them that they're going to face the lobster's claw.
Yes. Yes.
And when he defeats them, he burns a lobster claw into their forehead with his gloves.
Yes, that's right.
It's so wild.
That's right.
It's like the Phantom's ring.
And the other thing he does is he kind of, was it Roger? He tells him to go off. You must do this on your own. This is your test. He's very mysterious, like the Shadow.
Mysterious.
He's like, go do this thing. And he's like, why aren't you doing it? Like, why aren't you helping him out or anything like that? He has some weird moral code.
Yes.
Some mysterious, like
he's
the
exactly
Shadow.
Like the Shadow. It's great. And in this, he's a ghost.
Yes.
And the circumstances of how he works aren't even clear. He maybe possesses a dead Nazi.
Yeah.
But it's not at all clear. He's just like an avenging angel.
Right.
It's great.
Yeah. And we haven't mentioned, so I did mention Roger. Roger is a homunculus who was picked up in, I think, Wake the Devil.
I think it was was it in Wake the Devil, or was it Almost Colossus?
No, we got his origin in Almost Colossus. He started in Wake the Devil.
Okay.
They just found this big, like, Frankenstein dude in a lab, and Liz was like, oh, what does this hole in his chest do? And she kind of sparked him to life, which caused this huge explosion and stuff. But he is now part of the the BPRD team. He's not in the movies.
No,
he's kind of
which is a shame because he's a great character.
I don't think he wears much clothes.
He doesn't wear any clothing at all.
He doesn't wear like underwear or something.
He famously doesn't wear pants. Sometimes they ask him to get dressed and he'll put on a shirt.
Right.
Because he doesn't have genitals.
Yeah.
He has a large metal plate.
Okay.
With it looks like a latch.
Okay. Yeah.
Or like a door knocker hanging on his.
Right. A chastity belt.
Except it's not a belt. It's just a panel.
Right.
It's great. I really love Roger. He's made out of like horse dung and clay.
Yeah. So he's like a golem of sorts or something.
He was made in a tube by an alchemist.
Yes.
So he's like Frankenstein, except not made from dead body parts.
Right. And he's not like mini like a homunculus. He's actually like an 8-foot tall guy.
More like a golem.
Yes.
Anyway, so in the plot of this one, Hellboy is being sent on a mission to an old castle.
Yeah.
Because a extraplanetary object has been spotted in space, and when you look at it through a telescope, it has a swastika on it.
Yes. And there was an opening scene where like the Nazis were launching something, some rocket,
and the lobster foils it.
Yes.
And the castle blows up.
Yeah.
And everyone dies.
Yeah.
Cut to the present. Hellboy is being told he has to investigate this location because a Nazi space capsule that's been in deep space for 60, 70 years is going to crash back down on the site of the castle. Yeah. And it's, whatever it means, it's bad news. So you want Hellboy there. I think Hellboy and the homunculus, Roger, they want them there because they're the most indestructible.
Yes. Right.
The ones that are most likely to survive extraplanetary object.
But they've equipped Roger with a self-destruct mechanism unknown to him, and they've given the trigger to Hellboy, and Hellboy's like, what the hell is this?
I suppose this is another similarity, which I'd momentarily forgotten. Another similarity between the film and this comic is that there's conflict between Hellboy and his superiors.
Yes. Well, there's a bit of that even in Hellboy 1, when he loses those two agents in the subway, and then Manning gives him a dressing down.
That's true, but it's much more understated.
Yes.
In this, he's really chafing with the demand. The BPRD is much more bureaucratic in this film.
Yes.
He's really chafing against what seem to be their petty demands that he not be allowed out in public, for example.
Yeah.
Like Jeffrey Tambor's character Manning is bribing him with cigars not to go outside and things.
Or not to be spotted.
Yeah.
Not to be seen while he's on a mission. Yeah. Another thing I noticed about this volume reading was we started to get a lot of Marvel-style footnotes. Like, they mention an event that happens, and you get a little footnote that says, see Hellboy Almost Colossus, or see Hellboy Wake the Devil, or a bunch of stories, and some of which I haven't even read, and you really get a sense of the size that this thing has gotten.
You can feel the mythology pressing down as early as 2003.
8 years, 7-8 years into this, there's so much going on.
That's one of the great things about it. There's always a new conspiracy.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And usually Rasputin's behind it. Much like the famous story of his death, Rasputin just keeps popping back up.
Oh yeah, and we get a bit more about the aliens, which I thought had been erased from the story. I thought they'd been retconned.
I knew they were coming back.
You did mention that last week. You did mention that they appear again. And we find out that one of them was sent to actually kill Hellboy when he appeared on Earth, and then he saw that Hellboy seemed like he was in human hands and might turn out okay.
He thought he had free will.
Yes.
He saw a flicker of free will in him and decided not to kill him, and it's something he's never regretted, and he's lived... It's quite poignant, actually, that scene with the goofy alien.
Yeah.
Although he's in human form.
Yes.
And he just sort of gives a short but fairly moving speech about choice.
Yeah.
And then passes away and turns into a tiny little alien.
So, Klimt is trying to destroy the world. So unlike Rasputin, who's trying to create a new Eden somehow, and I'm not sure why that's necessarily a bad thing, but Klimt is like, I just want to destroy the world.
Yes.
And his daughter's like, what? Like...
Well, Klimt is... it's him... So, yeah. So... The object contains a seed or a spore from deep space. They sent a dead man, a dead physicist, up.
But he was speaking. He was dead, but he was talking, which is normal in Hellboy for corpses to talk.
Very normal for corpses to talk. They sent the first corpse in space because it would leave it open to possession by these enormous entities.
Yes, it could be a vessel.
Space.
Yeah.
And it's meant to come back with this entity inside it, which is going to grow and consume everything on Earth. It was another plan of Rasputin's cooked up by him back in the 40s, apparently. And
there's a great line from, I think it's from the Alien, he says, they long to devour all light and life, to make everything as cold and empty as themselves. Who can understand a thing like that? And I love that line, because you can't understand. It doesn't make sense in terms of plot or anything, like why they would want to eat everything, or what are they? What's the physical mechanism that they do this?
Unknowable eldritch horrors.
Yes, exactly.
Hellboy is great when it's dealing with unknowable eldritch horrors.
And there's an awesome line, I think, from Klimt, where he describes the destruction that's going to happen, and he says, "For a while now, all will be gravel and smoke."
Gravel and smoke.
I love that line so much.
It is a good line.
Yeah. How does Hellboy? I can't remember. He beats them as usual.
He does it with the help of the lobster.
Yes.
Lobster Johnson.
Yeah. That's, I don't know. There's fisticuffs as usual. Ilsa, the daughter,
the thing comes back.
Yes, and it becomes a giant worm.
And it consumes...
the title of the story.
There's a character, it's von Klimt's granddaughter, and she's a neo-Nazi.
Yeah.
The comic seems to heavily imply she's a Nazi and is responsible for the crimes of the Nazis, but she can't be, because she's a granddaughter of Klimt.
Right.
Instead, she must be a neo-Nazi, and she's a cold-blooded murderess.
Yes.
She has her neo-Nazi cronies who have come to the castle and are helping von Klimt to manage the return of the craft, because it needs to be signalled, they need to communicate with it. And it's heavily implied that these guys are scum. This is just the kind of...
But there's something else, like she's got prisoners as well, like at one time her dad...
That's the alien. The alien is the prisoner.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
But Klimt offers that alien to her as some, like, what do you want to do with this one?
Yeah, and she just kills him in cold blood.
Yeah, right.
Because she's awful.
Right.
They land the craft, the worm comes out, and the first thing it does is spew out all this gas that turns everyone into a frog monster.
Right.
And then it eats the frogs.
Yes.
And grows bigger. And that's just what it does.
Yes. Now, this is another weird mechanism. I think we had something like this in the very first Hellboy story, where when the Sadhu Hem woke up, it controlled the guys, then it ate them. Now we have this thing comes down. First, it turns them into frogmen, then it eats them. Why does it need to turn them into frogmen? Why can't we skip that step?
Yeah, exactly. I agree. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Klimt's granddaughter, he makes her put on a gas mask.
Yes.
It supposedly to shield her from the effects of the gas. But it doesn't. It only partially shields her. She still turns into a frog person, she maintains her faculties.
Yes.
She doesn't go mad or stupid the way the regular frog people do. Then Rasputin appears to her.
Yes.
And tells her his vision of the future. He says, your grandfather is mad. He only sees death and destruction.
Yeah.
But here's what's really actually going to happen. And it's happened before, and it will happen again. When the Earth is scoured of life, there's a transition to a new people, and you are the first of the new people. He touches her and a fire appears above her head to show her unique status.
Yes.
Nice touch. Hellboy is given some sort of apparatus, some sort of alien object to defeat the caterpillar monster with by the alien.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, von Klimt's robot body destroys it, and then Hellboy just blows it up with a grenade, but that's not enough either. And Roger, the homunculus, who has an ability to absorb energy,
that's right,
absorbs the essence of the worm into himself, then asks Hellboy to blow him up using the detonator that he knows Hellboy has. It was supposed to be a secret, but he knows about it. Hellboy refuses, and they eventually just get rid of it by striking it with lightning, because it's vulnerable to electricity.
Yes, well, so it's in Roger, and then Lobster Johnson puts a lightning rod into the hole in his chest. Lightning comes down. That also fries Lobster Johnson, although we've had lots of flashbacks.
He just comes back anyway, because the final scene is him killing Klimt's granddaughter. So she's still alive.
Right.
And she's getting ready to just go. I mean, there's nothing left for her. She's a lizard monster.
Yeah.
But she's still spellbound by Rasputin's vision. And she says to Lobster...
Is that after he was lightninged?
I think so. Perhaps not.
I think he was dead. Anyway.
It feels like the climax of the comic, aside from Hellboy.
Well, we get an epilogue with Hecate and Rasputin.
Oh, I love that epilogue.
Yeah.
But she says, you can't... She just says, sort of just gazing off into the distance, you can't kill me, I'm charmed. I'm the first of a new race. And Lobster Johnson says, you still must be punished for your crimes.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it's before. It's definitely before.
Okay, and he shoots her, and she dies.
Yeah.
Then Then Hellboy quits the BPRD.
He says he's going to go to Africa.
He's going to go walk about, and this is when the comics start getting really kind of more folklore and mythology focused. Those that focus on Hellboy, anyway. And then we get the epilogue. Rasputin and Hecate talk to one another. Rasputin, it's revealed, has 3 times tried to bring on the apocalypse. Each time he's become more diminished. And at this point, he's just a ghost.
Yes.
He bears a flaming brand in his chest, where Abe struck him with the harpoon, which is such a nice touch. It's so gothic.
Yeah.
And then she tells him that he's just a ghost now. He roars his defiance, swears he will bring on the apocalypse and make Hellboy kneel, but it's all just bravado.
Yeah.
He explodes. turns into scraps of light and bone, and then the Baba Yaga takes him and puts him in an acorn, hangs him around her neck, and that's where the comic ends.
Yes. And, okay, so let's talk a little bit about Johann, who shows up immediately after this in BPRD. So he was a medium, who's like a genuine medium, not a charlatan. And he, like, sent out his astral form, and then something happened, and his body was...
vaporized.
Killed.
So
he couldn't return to his body. So
there was a big event that struck all psychics all around the world, and it vaporized his body and his whole seance circle, everyone holding hands. And he tried to go back, and there's nothing there. So now he's
alive, but he doesn't have a body.
No.
He's an ectoplasmic form.
Which is dangerous for him, because he will eventually dissipate.
Right. So the BPRD built a containment vessel for him, and he was in that for a while, and then he was put into a humanoid containment body. So he's walking around in his suit with a helmet. A dome helmet.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes, that's great. It looks great. When Mignola draws it, it's like a light bulb.
It's very simple.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Not
very
at all like it is in the film.
No. And the other thing is, now what he does is, if somebody is recently deceased, he can make an ectoplasmic form of them that they can speak to. So he's like useful on investigations in that way.
He can also reanimate the dead.
Yes.
When he's in one comic, when his suit is destroyed, he inhabits a dog because he has to have a body, or he'll blow away.
Okay, right. Okay. Makes me wonder how they got him together in the first place. But anyway, that's a mystery.
Eventually. I mean, it's implied that he must have a containment of some kind,
right,
or he will eventually dissipate. He's just unusually potent psychic and strong-willed that he can hold himself together.
Yes.
And of course, he never died.
Yes.
Because he was outside of his body when it was destroyed.
Right.
He's a great character, generally.
Yeah. Should we want to mention Hellboy pancakes? So
you said you would mention
I did say we'd talk about it. It's just a one-pager where Hellboy is it's this really funny one-pager where Hellboy is about to be... He's on Earth, he's a little kid, like 5 years old, let's say, and he's about to be offered pancakes for the first time. And meanwhile, the dark forces of hell are like watching this unfolding. They're like, no, he must not be offered the pancakes.
Yeah.
And then it's really hilarious. And then he says, like, what are these? And Broom's like, they're pancakes. And then he has a bite and he's like, I love them. And then the flashback to the dark forces of hell are like, no, we have lost him.
They're all wailing and moaning.
That's
and
how
their teeth, because they know that once he's tasted the pancake,
that's it. They've lost him to the human side.
Yes, that's it. Because the pancakes represent the best of human experience.
Or just the temptation that he's never gonna go back to a world without pancakes after that. I just love it. It's like a jokey little dichotomy between the overwrought gothic kind of stuff and this weirdly jokey, funny thing with this little kid eating pancakes. I think it was the first time maybe Mignola had drawn him at that age as like a kind of cute kid kind of version.
It is a good comic. We can probably post it on the Facebook page.
Yes.
It's just a single page.
Yeah.
Anything else about the comic?
No, I think we can...
I like that Hellboy yells things when he punches people.
Yes.
So he says boom.
Yes.
And he also says pow a lot when he hits
does.
people.
He does.
I really
did
love
notice that. Yeah.
One other thing I love about this comic is the alien says at one point the Nazis communicated with these extrasolar intelligences, these terrible things. He says he doesn't understand how such dim, evil men could have done so. And it's just a throwaway line.
Yeah.
And then a little later in the comic, Hellboy finds the remains of these Nazi scientists sitting around a table with headphones on, presumably the guys that communicated with the intelligence. He opens a cabinet and it's full of the heads of saints.
Yes.
And they're all crudely wired into this radio, and it's such a nice touch.
Yeah.
Such a great
That was a great, interesting... I didn't even know he was going to explain it. Like, I wasn't expecting an explanation for that line. I thought that line was the explanation, and then, he actually finds all the heads of saints.
In the past, there were humans who could hear them with a rare sensitivity of mind.
Yeah.
I don't know how these, base men of the present could have done it. Well, it's because they literally wired up some saint skulls.
Yeah. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, very interesting, very pulpy stuff, as we mentioned. This one, like the ones we read last week and many other Hellboy stories, basically is Hellboy going to one location and dealing with one thing.
Yes.
You've got one mystery to solve, go to that gothic castle, go to that old mansion,
There'll
explore
be a cyborg monkey, a head in a jar, a big machine with saints' heads wired into it. a Nazi space capsule. I just really love these kinds of Hellboy stories. The ones with crazy machines and mad science.
Yes.
And some eldritch horrors.
Yes. Yeah. It's all kind
Chef's
of
kiss.
Yeah. So now we get to this movie, Hellboy 2, The Golden Army from 2008. So the key thing here is Hellboy 1 is 2004, Pan's Labyrinth 2006,
yes,
and then Hellboy 2 2008. So suddenly Del Toro's shifted up a gear in career prestige,
absolutely.
Let's say.
Pan's Labyrinth is the big... The first Hellboy did pretty well, but Pan's Labyrinth did really well.
Yes.
That was a big hit and won a bunch of Oscars.
Yes.
Was nominated for a bunch more. And Del Toro is not the obscure Mexican director that did Hellboy now. Del Toro is now the figure that we recognise, a world-class director of blockbuster, crazy fantasy epics.
Yes. So, I'm going to say right out of the gate, I think Hellboy 1 is kind of a Mike Mignola movie, and I think Hellboy 2 is a Del Toro movie.
Completely agree.
And I've never seen this before yesterday. But I kind of had a prediction about it based on it coming after Pan's Labyrinth.
Yep.
And my prediction was right.
Yep.
Everything about it, visuals, story, designs, everything was all like, okay, this is, you can see what's happened, the shift that's happened.
Yes.
I was surprised that Mignola had anything to do with the story on it. Well, we'll get through all that. So we start with actually a recap of the first one. So that was interesting too, because it's like, oh, now we've got a superstar director, and people are going to walk into the cinema who haven't seen the first Hellboy movie and are here for Hellboy 2.
Right.
So we need a recap of who Hellboy is, and a flashback to that black and white photo of him with all the troops, and all that kind of stuff is in there.
That makes sense.
As well.
That makes sense.
Then we start with 1955. I was surprised that John Hurt came back, so that makes him an all-star plus.
S-Class.
S-Class. And we get in 1955, so young John Hurt as Broom, with a little kid Hellboy who believes in Santa Claus and believes that Howdy Doody is real.
Yes, and really kind of creepy looking, I have to say.
I think they've CG'd up parts of him
Doesn't
or something.
look cute.
I don't know.
He probably they didn't CG. He should have been all CG or something.
I don't know.
But, like he was in the.
It seems like it's partly an actor where they put giant teeth on him.
Oh yeah, it's an actor. Not only is it an actor, it's a woman.
Okay.
Called Montse Ribe.
Okay.
A Spanish makeup artist who was the one that worked on Pan's Labyrinth and won an Academy Award for Best Makeup.
Okay.
She also acts. I think she was born in like 1970. So she's significantly older than a child.
Okay.
But she's of diminutive enough stature that she could play young Hellboy under all that makeup.
All right. So it's Christmas Eve. We should have done this a couple weeks ago. And he asks for a bedtime story. Yes. So Broom tells him a story about this war between humans that happened a long time in the past and elves and goblins and stuff. So right out of the gate, 5 minutes in, I'm starting to get lost with this story that he tells about how a long time ago humans and magical creatures all lived together, but then the humans got greedy, so there was a big war.
They were made with a hole in their hearts that nothing could fill.
Yes, so there was a big war between the humans versus the magical creatures.
Yep.
And then like this elf king dude built this what's called a golden army.
He commissioned the goblins. It's all quite complex, and there's a sort of CG puppet way of telling the story.
Yes, it's done as like a puppet show kind of. Because you've been watching Howdy Doody, I guess that's kind of the...
Of course that's why.
The tie-in to...
I was wondering why they
It's in a way that Hellboy would enjoy, or how he's visualizing
he's imagining it. That's clear now. It didn't even occur to me. So the King of the Elves, King Baelor, who has 2 children.
It's good that you picked up these names. I was struggling on this movie.
It's remembering notes.
Yeah.
He has 2 children, Prince Nuada and Princess Nuala.
Okay.
He commissions the goblins to build a golden army. Mm-hmm. Indestructible, indefatigable.
Yeah.
And it stomps the humans completely.
Okay.
At which point the humans sue for peace. Baelor, being a wise king, recognises the danger, I suppose, that the golden army represents, and accepts the human surrender and agrees that there will now be a truce, that the humans will keep to their cities, the forests will be left to the Fae, and the crown that controls the Golden Army will be broken into 3 pieces, 2 of which will be kept by the elves, and 1 part of which will be kept by the humans. And that, at which point Prince Nuada says, this is dumb, and leaves.
I did not like this breaking of the crown business. It seemed just too much like I've seen this a lot in other places, and also it didn't make sense to me that it was broken into 3 pieces and one party kept 2. Like, don't you just break it into 2 pieces, one each? Like, what is this? It was such a. I could just see
separation of
I could
powers.
see the following 2 hours of the movie starting to unfold. Like, oh, okay,
we need a fetch quest.
We need to find the 3 pieces instead of 2, which would have made more sense.
Yes. I agree.
Okay, whatever. So now that's.
There's also a bit of foreshadowing as well, in the sense that when John Hurt, Professor Broom, is telling the story, he has a lengthy digression about how when Balog put on the crown, he quickly asked if anyone would challenge him for control of the Golden Army.
Yeah.
And of course I was rewatching it, but even when I watched it the first time, I must have gone, I know how the climax is going to go.
Right, yeah. Okay. That's there, yeah.
It's just, yeah.
I also feel this is really very massive. This is obviously post Lord of the Rings, the movies.
Yes.
And
Sure.
this is beyond the scope of any Hellboy comics that I've read. They're not usually this huge in terms of like huge warring armies.
Correct. Yeah,
and
they're usually
stuff. It's
usually very
it's
small
a fairy.
scale.
Here's one fairy that you got to track down or something like that.
Hellboy's dealing with the things that live in the cracks of the world.
Yeah.
You know, he's usually only ever seeing one thing at a time.
Yeah.
Here we get, as you say, big scale thing. There are huge forest gods, a whole market full of
we'll get to
monsters.
that. Yep, the troll market.
The troll market. The court of the elves live in what looks like an old factory.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very Hellboy. It feels, as you said, much more like Del Toro.
Del Toro. So now we get the opening sequence. Again, it's not credits here. It's just a bunch of CGI gears turning.
It's with the score by Danny Elfman. So we've got some Danny Elfman music here. And I'm already way more on board with these credits because the music's rad. There's all these
I think the CGI is better than the hallway we got in the last movie. I would have made... I don't know if the word is liked. It would have been different if we had credits, because there were some bombshells for me when we do get the credits at the end of the movie, which... I don't know if we want to talk about them now or later.
If you want to go and watch the film and see the credits.
Yeah. But I was like, at the end of the movie, I was like, who is that character? And is that who I think it is? Anyway, we'll get to all that. Then we get through all the gears, and then we get the Hellboy II, the Golden Army opening. Then we get to Elric fighting, practicing with a sword in a subway.
So Elric, isn't he?
And it's elf with white hair, and he slashes a droplet of water into midair in a CGI post-Matrix CGI scene, and I was like, I actually liked the sword stuff. When he was swinging the sword around, I was actually like, I'm getting excited. I was like, oh, Hellboy's gonna fight this guy sometime. It's gonna be pretty awesome when this fight comes up. But then when he slashed that droplet in two, I was like, we don't need... It reminded me a bit of Matrix 2. There's a shot in Matrix 2 when like a light bulb hits the floor, as I remember. I've only seen it once, and it shatters, and the camera just watches this thing. I'm like, we don't need that.
It's very egregious. Also, there's lots of droplets in the air.
Yes.
You know, he probably
could hit one by accident.
He probably did hit it by accident.
But also, we know it's CG at this, and CG is CG. We know it's CG, and it's still 2023. Every time you see something that's CG, it's like that's CG, and it's not. We're not seeing a guy cut a drop of water into and being excited about it.
Because the actor who's playing Ulrich of Melderbone, he's really swinging that thing around.
Yeah, that's as I said. When I saw him swinging it around, I was like, "This is going to be great."
It was really rad, and I do like that. I don't hate that scene because he seems to be training in a. I
like that they reveal. You don't know that he's in a subway until the train goes by, and you're like, "Whoa, this guy's in the sewers."
Some great visual storytelling.
Yes,
it looks like he's in some kind of eldritch location, but a train goes right past, and we know instantly. There's nowhere left in the modern world for the fair folk.
Yeah.
They have to live in a he should be in a temple somewhere practicing his martial art.
Yeah.
Instead, he's literally being bothered by a subway going by every 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good.
I do like that.
Unfortunately, that kind of storytelling is few and far between for the rest of the film, sadly.
So we get he's got a henchman, which is this giant CGI thug named Wink.
It's not CGI. It's a man in a costume most of the time.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought it was maybe only for close-ups it was a dude in a costume. He looked it was annoying me. And I was like, I'm going to have to watch this CGI. Because every movie now, and has a big
Henchman.
CGI dude.
Yeah.
And they even make fun of it in the opening credits of Deadpool, where it's like one big CGI dude, and then there's this big CGI dude. It's annoying, even though they made a joke about it in Deadpool, it is annoying that a Colossus is a CGI thing, and here's our CGI thing in this movie.
Except he's not CGI, he's just a pretty crappy looking animatronic, I suppose.
Okay.
Even the claw itself is not CGI.
I was actually glad that he got killed off earlier than I expected. I thought we were going to have to put up with him to the end of the
He's a
movie.
troll, and he has a mechanical hand that he can launch on a chain, and which winds back to him.
Yeah.
And as we said last week, Mike Mignola loves to draw guys with mechanical hands.
Yeah.
So this feels like a Mignola. It looks like the Kriegaf, the cyborg monkey.
Yes.
Except it's a troll.
Troll
instead.
thing, yeah.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's called Mr. Wink. Apparently, that was the name of Selma Blair's dog.
Ah, okay.
Guillermo Del Toro named the character after Selma Blair's dog, who had one eye.
Right. Okay. So now we get back to the BPRD, or do we have the auction scene first?
BPRD first.
Okay. So we've got a much more elaborate BPRD this time. It looks a lot like Men in Black, actually.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I feel exactly the same way. This is another way it doesn't feel like BPRD.
No, which is just like government offices, basically. It's not like all this high-tech stuff, but every room has some thing going on in the background.
Yeah.
And some of it was a bit
Just a bunch
funny, I guess, but...
People wrestling a
just went
tentacle
on.
monster.
Yeah, that went on and on.
Someone's got a troll in handcuffs and they're like doing the perp walk with him. And I'm like, what is... I don't like that.
And it's all CGI stuff.
Yeah,
Again, so you can see the CGI money, all the money, the increase in budget from 1 to 2 is on screen in obvious CGI. That's what's happened.
And BPRD in the first one feels very off the books.
Yeah.
You know, it's in a black budget somewhere.
Yeah.
Even though they have this very impressive headquarters, otherwise it's very kind of sketchy.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, very secret.
Yeah.
Very secret, very sketchy. They're operating kind of without any kind of supervision because the things that they fight are these mysterious things. You can't have a spreadsheet about how many monsters tracked this month, right? But straight away in Hellboy 2, it feels much more bureaucratic. We have this big facility. We have lots and lots of staff.
Shiny tech. Yeah, lots of stuff.
And
that's right.
they're just dealing,
That's right.
you know, they're just managing monsters. Hellboy's not involved. They're just walking past them. Hellboy's not even looking at it.
Yeah.
It feels much less like the stories in the comic that you pointed out, where Hellboy goes to a location and solves a problem, and much more like Men in Black, where they're containing aliens at their big facility.
Yeah. Yeah. So we meet Doug Jones again as Abe. I think he's in 3 or 4 roles in this movie or something.
He's in at least 3.
So he's going to go up to All-Star SS class. Or something like that.
Per movie reviewed.
Yeah. And now, finally we get to Hellboy, and he's thrown a door. It starts with this giant CGI door being thrown down a hallway, smashing a hallway.
Oh, speaking of bureaucracy, so Jeffrey Tambor's character comes back, Director Manning. And
so he's up to S-Class as well.
Yes, he is. He is. This is his 4th film.
Yeah.
And he feels much more whiny, much more impotent. He's complaining a lot.
Yeah.
Like, he complains
He's
a lot
not
in the
ordering as much.
No.
In the first movie, he's like, you do this, and that dressing down he gave him.
He had the purse strings, it seemed, in the last episode. He was like their sole liaison with maybe with the United States government. But in this, he's very much a middle manager.
Yeah.
He's complaining constantly about the demands on him from Washington.
Yeah.
Also, it seems like the BPRD has the one we're dealing with is just a branch, because they're constantly talking about Washington. And also, Johann Kraus is sent from Washington.
That's right, yeah.
It's like, what, there's a bigger BPRD agency?
Or there's another that has guys as weird as Kraus, and they were expecting just a dude, but he turns up and he's this weird dude in this containment suit.
Yeah, I don't like it. It feels less like a crazy university campus.
Yeah.
And more like a big government concern.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's less true to the comics.
Yeah. So Hellboy and Liz are arguing, and that's why this door got thrown.
It's Liz that's destroyed the...
Oh, that's right.
She's got angry and has caught on fire.
Yeah.
And exploded.
And there's no Myers in this one. He's Hellboy got him transferred to Antarctica, where it's told, which is actually good because he was there as the audience surrogate. We don't need him in this one.
Arguably, we never needed him. Del Toro and Mignola are more confident now
Yes.
Presumably with the success of Pan's Labyrinth and the success of the first Hellboy film, that we don't need that audience.
There's also not enough time, because this movie's already at 2 hours. You can't add it. By the way, Liz, the fire effect is really good in this one, I have to say. I really enjoyed every time she flamed on, as the Human Torch would say. It was really cool looking. And
they're squabbling. They're having a domestic squabble.
Yes. So they are...
Hellboy isn't keeping his room tidy?
Yeah, she doesn't like that it's such a mess. So at some stage here, we got this scene of the auction house. So there's this auction house which is auctioning off a bunch of ancient stuff, including a... Venus of Willendorf, really? A giant one?
The real Venus of Willendorf is about this big.
Yeah, this one's like 12 feet
It's about
tall.
as big as my thumb.
Yeah.
And this one's, it's about 12, 15 feet tall.
Yeah, it's giant. And it's all sorts of stuff like that.
I don't know why. This seems like a really odd thing to do.
I think it's just there for...
to show that all of this stuff is really old.
Well, it's there because it does have an effect in the battle that's about to come up later on.
But also, it could have been anything. It could have been a big Saduhem.
That's true.
I think it's just meant to show, we know that the Venus of Willendorf is, 20,000 years old or something like that.
Yeah.
It's super old.
Yeah.
And yet, then they go on to say, here's another thing that perturbed me. When they're auctioning, they're actually auctioning the part of the crown.
Yes.
And they know what it is. They describe it.
Yes, but they don't know...
But they know what it is. They actually say, this is part of... They name the story that John Hurt told at the start.
Yes.
This is the famous golden crown built by such and such, associated with the famous story... I forget the name of it, but it's literally the same story that John Hurt was telling.
Yeah.
And they date it as well. They date it to the 1st century AD, which is not particularly old.
Now we move on to our next item... lot 777, a piece of the royal crown of Bethmura.
Yeah.
The origin of this piece harkens back to the saga of the Sons of the Earth and the creation of the fabled Golden Army.
That's it. They know it all.
Okay, well, but Broom knew it as well. So people
Broom had it in a book with the elven seal on the front of it. I think it's implied that this is esoteric BPRD knowledge.
Yeah, right.
And then the auction is, I feel like, why is this here? Just leave it out. Look at this amazing thing, provenance unknown.
Yes, I agree.
Why mention that?
You know why it's there for the audience? It's because otherwise the audience would be like... Because we haven't actually seen... We've only seen the puppet version of the crown. We haven't seen the actual...
I feel like it was a misstep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But, so...
And they give a date that's way too recent too, like 1st century AD.
I don't know if I found mentioning the date in here.
It's not important.
But anyway...
So why have it's completely at odds with the giant Venus de Willendorf statue.
Yeah. So then they lose power at the auction house, and it's attacked by Prince Nuada.
It's Nuada for the guy, Nuala for the girl.
Okay, so Nuada attacks... he's got some face huggers that he uses to attack people in the crowd.
They're tooth fairies.
Tooth fairies
They eat your bones.
Yes. Tooth fairies, and they eat the teeth first, which is why they're called tooth fairies, and he's there for the crown. Now the BPRD gets called into the aftermath, much like the first movie where they go to that library in the aftermath of an attack by the main villains. So the main villains have attacked, they go there. This scene really looked like a Hellboy scene because of all the statuary that was being auctioned. They're surrounded by this ancient kind of stuff, and it's all draped in shadows, and that... But it was deflated by that jaunty Danny Elfman music, which is like...
I agree.
Like, weirdly... This should be a spooky scene. I feel like that would be... It would play better.
Or a tense scene.
Yeah.
Because they're like locusts. I mean, they're literally
but let's say before we get to even after they swarm, I do feel it needs to be more dramatic and not a fun.
I thought the Danny Elfman's. I agree. A misstep again. It's just a very kind of goofy, very kind of Danny Elfman.
Yeah. Why is it so fun?
Yeah.
It should be something else. At this point, save the fun bit for the troll market later on in the movie.
Yes.
Or something.
So they go in, everyone's been eaten, the floor's all covered in tooth fairy crap.
Yeah, and then they're swarmed by these tooth fairies.
Yeah, and again, this is a lame scene. So Danny Elfman's score is completely out of place. They're also shooting the fairies.
They're shooting, so there's thousands and thousands, and Liz is there shooting them one by one. But there were like there was tens of thousands of these things. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And then Hellboy's solution is, well, I'm going to roll this giant Venus of Willendorf onto them, and that's going to kill them. Like, they can fly out of the way.
One?
Yeah, can't they just fly out of the way?
Just one. Yeah, and
crushes a couple.
There's hundreds of them flying everywhere. They eat the mooks down to their shoes straight away.
Yeah.
But our main characters, with their plot armor, they're just sort of flying around them in circles.
Yeah.
And they're like waving their arms around like they're swatting flies, and they're shooting them out of the air, which is absurd. Like, it's like shooting a swarm of locusts.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yes, exactly. That's
and every now and again, for dramatic effect, I guess one will latch on and they'll have to pull it off.
Yeah.
And there's no tension. The tension's just sucked out because it's just like, why haven't these things eaten them yet?
Yeah.
Eventually someone says the obvious, it's like, Liz, you need to burn all of these guys in one go.
Yeah. So Liz does a flame on. Abe hides in the vault upstairs. They're all running up to the safe.
He hides in a safe.
And
Hellboy deliberately positions himself in front of a window.
Yeah.
So he will be blown out into the street where there are lots of reporters, because it's been established in an earlier scene with Manning that Hellboy is really chafing about not being allowed to go out in public.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah. They're just trying to keep it secret.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't something he really cared about in the first film, but now he really feels like he should be allowed out into the world.
Yeah, in fact, in that first issue of BPRD Hollow Earth, Manning says that he likes having Abe and Hellboy and Liz on the team because it's a show of strength to maybe their enemies or other forces.
Yeah. Yes.
Or it also helps them get funding from the Americans and the British because they've got these guys on the team. It's like...
The thing, you have two ways of approaching, I think, having crazy monsters in an otherwise... crazy stuff. Superheroes, monsters, vampires, aliens, whatever. In our world, in a world that's otherwise indistinguishable from our world, the real world, you kind of have two approaches. First approach is the masquerade. That's where they're secret, and they have to stay secret. Because obviously they would have a humongous impact on the world if they were revealed. The other is, they're out, but life's just going on normally. Don't ask questions. Yeah. So that would be like the Marvel, the MCU universe, or like the Hellboy, the world of the Hellboy comics.
Yeah.
People just know Hellboy's there and are getting on with their lives.
Yeah. This
film is neither of those because it tries to be both. And
yes, well,
it's about the breaking of the masquerade.
Yes.
Because Hellboy is blown out into the reporters. And it's just not dealt with any kind of depth or in an interesting way.
We'll get into that
because the revelation that demons are real would have some sort of catastrophic effect worldwide. Yes. You wouldn't just be getting on with your life if you knew that the supernatural was real and one religion was right.
But the problem is even more complicated than that. But we'll get to it. So because he's blown out, and two of the little tooth fairies are blown out with him. Only two survived this blast. I don't know. Anyway, he crashes down.
Oh, then he shoots them out of the air again.
He shoots them out of the air.
They're about to pounce on a crowd of people, and then Hellboy shoots them out of the air with his gun, and would, of course, have absolutely shot the people that were standing right behind the tooth fairies as well.
Well, maybe he used those special holy water bullets.
Bullets don't just evaporate once they've hit something. Especially something as small as a tooth fairy. I just thought, Hellboy just shot into a crowd.
Yeah.
I hated that.
Yeah.
And then everyone swarms him, starts taking pictures, he's out.
And they're like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it's Hellboy, and he's real. The guy from the comic books is real. Yeah. They're kind of hero worshipping him.
Like
he likes it. They're trying to get Abe's signature and stuff as he comes out. And everything seems good. Oh, by the way, while they were in there, at one stage, Abe pushed Liz back and detected that she was pregnant. Yeah. With his psychic abilities.
I guess that's why she was so moody.
Yes.
Oh, cancelled.
Now I think we get to some scenes of the prince dealing with his father in their kingdom. Yeah, and it's all done in this kind of sepia, which it looks very much like Pan's Labyrinth stuff.
And the location is like You're right. The aesthetic is very Pan's Labyrinth. It looks like...
it's not sepia. It's like that yellowish tone to the... Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's sort of like an abandoned factory, I think, all lit up with fire.
Okay.
Or an old development.
I didn't even know where they were, really.
Well, it's they're living on the periphery of the human world. Yeah. Yeah, but it's less impactful than the subway train. Yeah. We're introduced to Doug Jones's second character, which is a guy called the Chamberlain, just kind of droopy-faced, weird guy with very long fingers.
Yes.
That were automated.
Oh, okay.
They're not Doug Jones's fingers operating that. They're servo-driven.
Okay.
They go in. Nuada demands the crown.
Yes, because now he has one piece from the auction, yeah.
He says the humans haven't respected the truce, which they absolutely haven't. And the king, Baylor, whose dialogue is all in Gaelic, incidentally,
yes.
Says, well, we just keep the truce anyway, because that's what we do. It's in our nature to abide by agreements. If they've done this, then that be it on their own head.
Yeah.
And Nuada's like, what kind of bullshit is this?
Yeah.
he Matrix Kung Fu's his way through the king's bodyguard, kills the king,
yeah.
takes his part of the crown, turns to take the third piece off his sister, who carries the other bit. She's gone. She's fled.
Yeah.
Now we're on to the next stage, which is that he has to get the next piece of the crown off her.
So he has two pieces. He has the two pieces from the king. Okay, so again, why are we at 3 pieces? We still...
Because the film has to be 2 hours long, not 1 hour.
Okay. So...
And also, Nuala has to meet Abe for the dumbest romance ever.
Okay. So now we meet, the BPRD is bringing in Johann Kraus.
To deal with Hellboy.
To keep Hellboy under control.
Yeah.
And Manning assumes that this is going to be a normal human dude, but it's not. He appears and he is a guy in a containment suit, very elaborately designed, actually looks pretty cool.
It does look cool, and it's all practical, no CGI.
Wow.
They were going to do it CGI, but it was apparently too expensive.
Okay.
They were going to do something like that Umbrella Academy fishbowl head guy.
Yeah.
Too difficult with the state of the art in 08, so they did it old school with old magician's tricks.
Wow.
With
so like, he's like a real life Mysterio.
Yeah, like a real life Mysterio. There's a guy's head in there.
Okay.
But we can't see his head because they've used mirrors, they've used perspective. Really impressive, actually.
Okay.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Less impressive is the character. He's a kind of a caricature of a stiff-necked German guy.
I don't think he was that stiff-necked. He's not really uptight. He seemed like a fun kind of guy. It's more that Hellboy reacts to him as like, I don't trust Germans, kind of. That's his reaction.
I don't know. He feels a bit much. I suppose it's okay because he's a literal ghost man in a walking robot suit, so it's okay for him to be a caricature. But if he was a real dude, you'd be like, what is this?
Yeah.
Could you imagine a real person acting like that?
Yeah, yes. I guess so.
But we give it a pass because it's like a ghost man in a robot suit.
Well,
fine.
But I did find it, so they've changed his powers up, much like they changed Abe's powers. But maybe not as, in my opinion, the changes to Abe making him psychic are worse than what they've done to Johann Kraus. So in this Johann, he can use his ectoplasm. He can like emit it through his fingers, and it has it's almost like telekinesis. Like he can manipulate it to.
Well, he's a poltergeist.
Yes.
I
have to say, I also
think...
Does
Abe not do stuff like that in the comics? I suppose he doesn't. I don't have a problem
Johann.
with it. I think... Johann, rather. I think I'm okay with it. He does inhabit things... He does reanimate things in the comic.
Yes.
In this, he reanimates it, and... Although, you're right, it is a bit odd, because he reanimates a tooth fairy, but instead of being inhabited by him... It's like the Tooth Fairy's spirit comes back into it and they can interrogate it.
Yes.
It's a combination of two of his abilities from the comic. Because as you mentioned, he can talk to the recently departed and he can reanimate corpses with his own essence.
But he talks to them by he makes an ectoplasmic form of them.
Well, here they've combined the two.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it. He does poltergeisty stuff.
Well, as I'm saying, it's not as distinct, it's not as distant from his normal powers as Abe's psychicness is from...
Yeah, I don't even... Yeah, exactly. I feel like I didn't even notice it. I'm much more concerned about the way his character changed.
Yes.
Which I'm not super thrilled about.
Yes. I see what you mean. Yeah, because you don't even know that he has a German accent in the comic. He's not written with any kind of phonetic dialogue or anything.
He does drop the odd German word.
Oh, right. Okay, right.
But here he's played by Seth MacFarlane.
Yeah.
The voice.
Yeah, which I didn't... Even at the end credits it said Seth MacFarlane. Like, who was that in the movie? And then when the full credits rolled, I was like, oh my god, he was the voice.
And he does a pretty okay... I mean...
I liked it.
It's a plausible German accent. Yeah. Apparently Seth MacFarlane studied German in his youth.
Okay.
And that's why he was able to do it. He doesn't sound like one of his regular characters. Originally they had a German actor.
Okay.
Playing the role of Johann Kraus, but Del Toro didn't like the way his voice sounded.
Huh.
Didn't like the way it sounded once they put that reverb through it.
Yeah, right.
And Seth MacFarlane was brought in later, much like Jeffrey Tambor was in the first film.
Yeah. By the way, how does the voice work?
It's coming out of that. He has some sort of...
Is it coming out of the costume? Because
It is.
In one scene in the movie, he has lost the costume and he's still speaking.
Still, it sounds the same.
And he sounds the same. So I'm like, is it the ectoplasm that's making the noise? I think it must be.
It's a really wacky suit.
Yeah.
It's like steam. It looks like it's steam powered because it's constantly shooting gas out. And at the front, it has something. It has like little calipers that are running on what looks like a music box kind of deal.
Yeah, it does look like that, doesn't it?
And it's all just very baroque and kind of really interesting
What was
looking.
the Tambor replacement? Did we mention that last week?
I don't think I mentioned it last week. He came on quite late.
Okay.
I think about a week into production because the original guy either pulled out or wasn't working out.
Okay.
And he's so great in that role, so it's another one of those serendipitous things.
Right. So, since we've talked about the Seth MacFarlane bombshell, the other bombshell for me at the end credits was that Luke Goss from Bros was playing the Prince. That
shouldn't have been a surprise at all because he played the monster in Blade 2.
Blade 2, yeah. I didn't know that either until I went onto the Wikipedia and I was like, why is the guy from Bros playing Elric in Hellboy 2?
Not only he was Novak, the vampire that preys on vampires in Blade 2, which was obviously also a big success.
Yeah.
And led to... So much like Pan's Labyrinth led to this film, Blade 2 was what led to Hellboy being made in 2004. And again, Del Toro likes to work with actors with whom he's worked before. Yeah. And Luke Goss does a really good job.
He's really good. No question about that. I just had no idea that he was an actor on the side.
He apparently worked really hard to get into shape, because he's in amazing shape, and that's him a lot of the time. He trained for about 6-7 months. Yeah. With a spear and sword.
Right.
Respect.
Right.
So a welcome surprise then.
Yeah. So they somehow figure out that they need to go to this troll market to get more information. How. It had something to do with the resurrected Tooth Fairy.
Oh, right. The Tooth Fairy you're right. When Kraus reanimates the Tooth Fairy, Tooth Fairy remembers, it's apparently sapient, and it remembers having been in a box and hearing troll voices.
Okay.
And then they say, well, it must be the troll market then.
Yes. So they figure out where this troll market's under the Brooklyn Bridge.
We get a really long scene.
Very long. This scene was like the casino scene in Last Jedi. It's like it's right there in the middle of the movie, and it's like all these kooky characters. It's very un-Hellboy.
Yes, it's completely un-Hellboy.
It's for him to walk around and have all... I did like the stuff before they got in there where the public are like... Now Hellboy's just walking around in public and people are commenting, people are making comments to him, the general public.
The coin is flipped now, people are abusing Hellboy.
Yeah, a little bit. They're making fun of him.
So it's turned on a dime. He was loved in his first introduction. So the human reaction to Hellboy is very uncomplicated. Adulation at first, which immediately turns to contempt and hatred.
I don't know if it's quite that strong yet, but anyway. It's
pretty much,
so
I think so.
we had the very long scene in the...
It takes forever to even get to the troll market.
Yes.
We have a really long scene where there's a lot of kind of interpersonal conflict in this movie, but it's all very superficial. Mm-hmm. Very lame.
Oh, by the way, there was a bit where after the public unveiling, when they were revealed to the public, Hellboy's watching this on TV and laughing uproariously at Manning's TV appearance where Manning looks ridiculous. Yeah. And the way he's cackling about it was also very un-Hellboy.
Yeah. Yeah. Hellboy doesn't just... Yeah. It was really cheap.
He makes sarcastic jokes, but he doesn't cackle like that.
That's right.
And
it feels... I read a review that described the interpersonal conflict in this film as sitcomish.
Right.
At the level of a sitcom. You know, Liz and Hellboy are fighting about him not cleaning his room.
Yeah.
Hellboy chafes against the strict, by-the-book leadership of Johann Kraus. Hellboy is constantly poking fun at and running rings around the hapless bureaucrat that Manning has turned you into this film. It all feels... And I can't help but compare it to Hellboy 1, where it was much more deep-running, the way people related to one another. And Tambor's contempt for Hellboy was much more just about... Tambor just doesn't want a world with monsters in it.
Yeah. Yes.
You know, he's not trying to keep the bratty kid in line and, oh my god, this kid, how do I handle him? Like, Manning... does not like what Hellboy represents. Right. A world with monsters.
Yeah.
You tell he's just perturbed by everything about his job, where he's liaison to the BPRD. There's nothing like that in this one, I'm afraid. I can't help but feel.
Yeah. So this Troll Market is very, as I said, very un-Hellboy-like, but also un-Mignola. Like,
there's nothing like
when they were sitting down to work at the story, I feel like this idea did not come from Mignola.
I agree. It feels like Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
It feels like it feels like Diagon Alley from
Yes,
Harry Potter.
I thought that too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And you know what else it reminded me of? Monkey Bone.
Well, yes, and I think it has this whole movie has a very 80s vibe.
Right.
Those scenes where they're walking around just talking to random creatures, and there was something about it that was like, this is like Labyrinth or
like Labyrinth, yeah.
or Dark Crystal or
not as good.
any one of those 80s fantasy movies.
Yeah.
But just done like in a much slicker way, and despite all my complaining, I mean, stuff's visually amazing.
Yeah, we are complaining about this a lot, but it does look great. Yeah. I really enjoyed the second viewing of the film, actually.
Yeah, right.
I think.
Yeah. But I was just and what were some of those other? I'm forgetting a bunch of those 80s fantasy movies.
I know what you mean. Yeah, Labyrinth, and it is very much like Labyrinth. That scene. You're right, and it just implies that there's this whole other society.
Yes, well, they have to wear these special glasses to see it, as another thing, which have been built by Krauss has built these?
No, they some 19th century.
Oh, okay.
Alchemists built them.
Right.
And Abe was very excited that Krauss had recovered them.
Yes, okay, right.
And everyone's very impressed with Krauss.
Yeah.
You know, Abe is very impressed with him.
Yeah.
Manning is very impressed with him. So, of course, Hellboy is not impressed with him.
Right.
He's grumpy.
Right. So, while they're down there, Abe meets the princess.
She's doing her own fetch quest. She needs to get a map to the Golden Army. She was there when the Golden Army was made. Why would she need a map to where it is? That's dumb.
Yeah.
Also, why wouldn't the king just keep it with him? Why does he have it in a random place in North America, in a map seller's shop?
Which is where Nuada got the tooth fairies from, so they were in the same place.
The same market that sells the tooth fairy also happens to have the map to the location of, like, too many coincidences. Also, she was there.
Yeah.
She's supposed to be immortal.
Yeah. Okay,
she was there when these events happen. Ugh.
Somehow at this stage they end up fighting Nuada, the prince, right? And then he's
looking for Nuala.
Yes.
He's tracked her to this market. He knows where she is.
So one of them gets hurt, just like the Corsican brothers. Like when one gets hurt, the other feels
She's got the twin bond,
and they can sense where each other are.
Yes. Abe immediately and ridiculously falls in love with Princess Nuala.
Yes.
And insists on taking her back to the BPRD.
Yes. But meanwhile, the prince unleashes this Swamp Thing elemental, this plant elemental, which becomes this giant kaiju, which Hellboy has to fight. You can kind of see the seeds of Pacific Rim here with this giant creature that Hellboy has to fight in the streets.
Yep.
But this is the scene in particular for me where after Hellboy defeats this giant thing, the people really hate Hellboy for some reason.
For some reason.
I'm like, why? Didn't he just... So you read the comics about how heroic this guy was for a lot of years. Now you know he's real, and he just saved you from this giant thing, and then they're like throwing rocks at him.
Exactly.
Why?
It's just turned on because the story needs people to hate him now.
Yeah.
It just turned... Everyone reacts in the same way. There's no nuance. This is the trouble when you have both of these versions. Like when you have the breaking of the masquerade in a film, you have to handle it really, really carefully, or it just ends up like this. People end up just acting like robots. And then we have ridiculous stuff like Hellboy's back in his room, and instead of gleefully watching TV coverage that's sympathetic towards him and making fun of Manning, now we have silly talking heads saying that Hellboy is a threat to traditional marriage because he's got a relationship with Liz. It's like, no one would say that. It's just this is just a really unsubtle, I guess, kind of poking at modern conservatism, I suppose.
Yep.
Except it's everybody. It's everybody all at once now suddenly hates Hellboy.
Yeah.
Everyone's turned into a Republican circa 2008.
Yeah. We've got thunder and lightning happening outside, which is appropriate.
Very appropriate.
I don't know if the recording will pick that up. Anyway, so they get the map. The brother attacks. It's a bit like part 1 when Rasputin shows up when Cronon's been captured. We also get a scene where Abe is operating on Hellboy, fixing his wounds, which is very similar to the first movie. So he gets the map. He needed the map as well. He needed to figure out where this thing was.
Yeah.
But she has secreted one piece of the crown in a book before she was taken away by the brother.
Yeah.
And Abe finds that piece, but he doesn't tell the BPRD about the piece.
No, because he's fallen in love with
Yes.
Nuala and he wants to rescue her.
He wants to rescue her. And Hellboy and Liz are like, okay, we're going to go on a secret mission to rescue her. We got to go to Ireland, which
so
is
they
where...
They fly from wherever they are, New York.
And Johan's in on it. He's like, yeah, I'll come with you. Like, he's not... Maybe this is why I thought he wasn't so uptight. I didn't think it was a turn. I just thought...
Well, what happens is Liz... He says, no.
Oh, Hellboy's
Washington
been badly injured in a fight with the prince. Right. Which is killing him. He's dying.
Yeah.
And they need to extract this piece of spear from his chest.
That's right.
Magically, so they need to go to Ireland.
Nuala has found Nuala at the BPRD headquarters because he can find her wherever she is. Meanwhile, Abe is sort of hitting it off with her. He's fallen for her, head over heels. It's okay, fine. There's an okay scene where Hellboy and Abe are drinking beer together.
Yes, and they're listening to Barry Manilow.
Yeah, listening to Barry Manilow. It's a pretty good scene.
It's good.
I like that scene. I wish there was more of that. And then Nuada shows up. They're drunk. Hellboy kind of gets in a drunken fight with Nuada, but he's no match for him, and he's stabbed with the spear. Then Nuada announces that he will kill his own sister and himself, weirdly, unless... And also Hellboy, who's been stabbed with the magic spear, unless they bring the final piece of the crown, which is meanwhile hidden in a book in the library, to the location of the Golden Army.
Yes.
Which he doesn't mention where it is.
Yeah.
He just leaves. And Abe has meanwhile told Hellboy that he can't kill... When fighting Prince Nuala, he can't kill him, because if he kills him, he'll kill Nuala as well.
Right.
And he's in love with Nuala. Alright, so then Washington again has said that they cannot go on this mission because it's too risky. Nuala can't have the crown because the Golden Army is too dangerous. Liz says to Kraus, oh, you're not a man anymore. If you were still human, you'd understand that you have to save the one you love. Okay. And then that apparently makes him do his change of heart. He carries his
I feel like he was already on their side. I didn't feel like it was a change. But anyway,
It feels a bit arbitrary to me. This guy who's obsessed with protocol and rules.
I didn't even feel like he was that obsessed before. Maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention.
I've skipped past it. Probably my favourite, pretty much my favourite scene where Hellboy and Kraus have a fight.
Yes. Yeah.
Watch that scene on YouTube. It's just really funny. It's funny. We won't go into detail, but it's really funny. He becomes a poltergeist and starts whacking him with lockers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then they fly a 2-propeller plane across the Atlantic to Ireland, which is absurd.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh well, at least it wasn't.
It's an Amelia Earhart type.
At least it wasn't a helicopter.
Yeah.
So yeah, they fly it all the way from the eastern coast of North America to Northern Ireland. There they arrive at the Giant's Causeway. They find a goblin man who has no legs, who takes them...
Okay, let's talk about this. So, first of all, they land on this, it's not a moor in Ireland, what do they call it? So, they land on this hilly, beautiful kind of Irish landscape.
Yep.
It looks like the Wicker Man, which my son started saying, oh God, oh Lord.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
As soon as they arrived, Ashton started going, oh Jesus Christ! But it was weird to me that it was broad daylight. Like, that was not... I guess, yes, Hellboy runs around in broad daylight and those kinds of locations, but it didn't look right to me. Something about it was weird. Like,
interesting.
Couldn't we do this at night or something?
CG looks better at night. Well, I guess because it's all practical. They wanted that practical light in daylight.
Yeah, okay.
Because the guy in the in the little cart
who's this guy? Who is this guy? Did anybody walking around up there get to see this weird creature hanging around?
Yeah, that's another thing.
Very strange, because this thing is the weirdest looking thing. It doesn't look like a Mike Mignola design that you've ever seen. It looks like something out of Pan's Labyrinth.
It's another Pan's Labyrinth.
And you're like, well, so this guy just hangs out here, and anybody, if I went for a walk up that hill, I would see this creature that would freak me out.
I know you say that, but that actually is a bit more like Mignola. Like,
yes, of course it is.
You stumble across this.
But we don't know what this guy is. We've never been told who this character is, why he's like this.
Yeah, well, there's just a random...
He's like a centaur, but instead of a horse, he's a cart on the bottom half.
He has no legs, and he drags himself around in a little wheeled cart.
Yeah.
And he has sort of like poles that he
Yeah.
uses to pole himself around.
Yeah.
It looks very uncomfortable and very makeshift.
Yes.
And then later it's revealed he's the guy that built the Golden Army.
Right.
And I thought this at the time, and I thought it again. You're the guy that built this army of automata. Build yourself some legs.
Yeah.
So it's revealed he lost his legs when he built the army.
Okay.
So in the distant past, he's had hundreds and hundreds of years to build new legs. Instead, it's going around on something that he looks like he just built yesterday.
The other thing that struck me is, so there's also, like, we find out in this scene, the rocks that are on the hill actually are a being that's kind of half buried, this giant being that wakes up. And my feeling was Mignola would have had some kind of Irish folklore creatures here.
That's right.
Like, can we have an interaction with a Selkie or something like that? You know what I mean? Like something that we've...
Yeah, we would have got a line from Abe or someone saying, "Oh, it's Gruagach."
Or something like that. And instead, we've just got these things that have been invented whole cloth that have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah.
You don't get all that mythology.
Yeah. Agreed.
That was a bit sad. So then they get down there. We get a giant CGI golden army down there. They come to, like, of course, Nuada and Nuala are down there. He puts the crown on, the army is activated.
Well, first Abe gives him the crown.
Yes.
No one knows Abe has it,
That's
incidentally.
right. That's
they
right.
think they're just there. No, you've also missed the scene with the Angel of Death.
Oh, yes. Okay, sorry.
Goblin Man takes Hellboy, who's now comatose, to a thing. It's a pretty cool looking thing, but again, it looks like something out of Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah.
Not something out of Hellboy.
Yeah.
It looks like that pale man from Pan's Labyrinth, that thing with the eyes and his hands.
Yes.
So it's this sort of weird thing with peacock feather wings and no face, just a sort of like a half moon kind of face.
Yeah.
And this is Doug Jones's third role.
Yeah.
It just announces it's the Angel of Death and it's in charge of Hellboy's destiny, and that it will save Hellboy on the condition that he brings on the apocalypse in the future, sequel hook. To which they agree. Liz whispers to Hellboy that he's going to be a father, it revives him, and then they go for the final confrontation. So this is just a weird aside with this monster.
Yeah.
I think it was probably...
That's why I didn't remember to mention it. They might as well have just arrived. It's actually one of those scenes that you could cut and would appear in the director's cut on DVD.
Well, I think it's there for a sequel.
Right.
The sequel.
Oh yeah, because the Angel does mention all the stuff about Hellboy's destiny and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So then the Golden Army. There are these CGI things. They look pretty cool. We have a big kind of...
No, they don't look cool. They look like CGI things.
Yeah,
The design is cool. The design is lovely, as is the design of everything in this movie.
Again, it's very Del Toro. I mean,
it actually
Del Toro
looks
loves
like
his clockwork.
Return to Oz. There's another one of those 80s fantasy movies.
They look like TikTok.
This whole movie looks like Return to Oz.
It never occurred to me. They do kind
of. In fact, the guys that are going around on the wheels are a bit like that guy that's carting himself around, in terms of weirdo design.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's like sure, you look at a drawing of one, if I looked at the art design book, I'd be like, wow, that thing's amazing. But it's just so much CGI marching around, then they fight them all, then they start reassembling themselves.
So they're truly indestructible in the sense that they can reassemble them. Because I was thinking, Hellboy is just taking these things apart.
Yeah.
Something tells me a tank isn't going to have much trouble with it.
Yeah.
But they can reassemble themselves. So... There's 70 times 70 of them. It's about 5,000. Are they really a threat to the armies of the world? I suppose.
Was there only 5,000? I thought there was...
70 times 70. What's that?
I thought there were...
49,000? 4,900, rather?
I thought there were a lot more. Well, the CGI makes it looks like there's hordes.
There are more.
It's a CGI horde. It's a Lord of the Rings horde.
Yeah, you're right.
Of...
Well, the goblin says that there's 70 times 70, which sounds like a very biblical, impressive figure, but it's actually only it's less than 5,000.
Yeah, okay.
I just remember thinking that this is not really a threat. They only do close combat. They just have a sword and shield.
Yeah, yeah.
I was half expecting maybe a twist that the Golden Army was actually impotent compared to modern warfare. Yeah.
No, you know what? Actually, the thing I liked, so they fight the army, and then Hellboy goes one-on-one with Nuada.
I do like that.
I like this because every movie these days, they fight the villain, and then there's a bigger thing that comes out that they have to fight. And I like that it was reversed. Like, we fight the army first, deal with that, and now it's just a one-on-one.
I would have liked a twist where the army...
It's a bit like, get the bell ready, it's a bit like Paul versus Fade at the end of Dune.
Yes.
It's going to come down to this one-on-one.
Yes. I was going to get to that fight.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, I have nothing... I've already said it. The Clockwork Army is disappointing. There should have been a twist that this was an unstoppable force in human prehistory when the pinnacle of technology was a sling.
Right.
But now, maybe Hellboy could have blown him up with a rocket launcher or something.
Yeah.
And then, but nothing like that happens. They're still treated as the ultimate.
No, in fact,
force.
I think, but they couldn't go down that route because he used the grenades to kill the Sadhu Ham in part 1, and maybe it would have just been more of the same. Maybe.
I just feel like I feel like it might have been a better thematically, because running especially through the comics is that the fair folk are doomed. They're vanishing from the world.
Yeah.
And Prince Nuada's going for this last ditch thing.
Yeah.
This golden army, this ultimate weapon, and what if it had turned out that it's just 20,000 years too late?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought it might have been a nice touch, but no, it's not present. It's this unstoppable force. And then, as I mentioned way back earlier, when he puts on the crown, he has to say, "Does anyone challenge me?"
Right.
No one says anything.
Yeah.
Then they have because they have to have a big fight with them, which they do. Kraus possesses one of them and is running around stomping all the others. It glows blue instead of gold or red or whatever, and starts stomping all the others. Another thing I don't like is they bellow. Here's how everything bellows. There's about 4 or 5 different monsters in this that roars.
Yeah.
There's monsters.
There is a Wilhelm scream in here as well, which Afton picked up
that.
at the very start. I think it was this week, not last week. But
last week had the Wilhelm at the start when the man falls in the portal. Did we not mention that?
Oh, maybe that was it. Sorry, that was it.
I didn't hear one this time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. So, but then after they've had their big fight, suddenly it occurs to Hellboy that he can challenge. He's allowed to challenge because he's royalty. He's the son of the
that's right. So this is a key plot thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so that is actually good. That's actually a cool little nugget in there, that he is some kind of hell prince. So that is actually pretty neat.
That's right. And then you're right. And you can't have that and the army being impotent. It has to be potent. So then they have a cool fight.
Yeah.
It's very cool. Much better than anything in the first film.
Yep.
Where Hellboy is just sort of lumbering. It's just clearly Ron Perlman lumbering around. Here they've got someone in it.
Yeah.
And it's rad. Hellboy is absolutely kicking butt. Hellboy wins. Nuada is defeated. I forget. Nuala stabs herself for some reason.
Yes, to defeat him, because he's defeated and he gets up. He gets up. He's about to stab Hellboy in the back.
Oh yeah.
And she kills herself to stop him
save Hellboy.
To save Hellboy.
Why not just? Why stab yourself in the heart? Why not just cut off a finger? That would be pretty distracting.
Yeah.
Whatever. Anyway, I forgot to say, Abe turns over the crown to Nuada, and everyone's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
That was the dumbest thing ever. And he says, "You'd do the same to Liz." And I'm watching him thinking, yeah, he would do the same for Liz, but he's known Liz his whole life.
Yes.
You met this girl earlier today.
Yes. Yeah.
That's lame.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so
bit of movie storytelling.
The film ends, they leave, and then they all quit the BPRD.
They all quit the BPRD. On the Hill, which is how he quits on the Hill in...
roll credits.
In Conqueror Worm.
Yeah, you're right, it is like Conqueror Worm.
Yeah.
And Johann Kraus tells Manning, who admires him, to suck his ectoplasmic Schwanzstücke.
Yeah.
Schwanzstücke, for fans of Mel Brooks, is the word used to describe the Frankenstein monster's penis in Young Frankenstein.
Okay.
It's not a real German word.
Okay, excellent.
It's just German sounding. It's probably meant to sound Yiddish, actually.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so that was a fun little touch.
Excellent. So end credits, the only thing I will note, as I mentioned, I had 2 shocks, but also one of the producers is Mike Richardson. He was probably listed on the first one too, and I just didn't notice, but just want to point out that we are in the Dark Horse Cinematic Universe, because his name is on all of these, right?
Excellent.
That pipeline.
Does he just get a credit now on all Dark Horse?
I'm sure, because he's one of the handshakers that's making these deals that are getting these movies made.
We were supposed to get an after-credits sequence.
Okay.
But was cut, apparently, I think because they were running out of money.
Right. There was one there's a mid-credit sequence in the first one where we see Manning has been left behind in the temple.
Yes. Yes. This one was a sequel hook.
Okay.
It shows Zinko, the industrialist, being escorted through Rasputin's mausoleum from the first film.
Okay.
It's quite lengthy. You can watch it.
So they shot it?
They didn't shoot it. They added it as a special feature on the DVD
Okay.
for Hellboy: The Golden Army, and it's a comic kind of animated comic.
Okay, so it's like storyboards.
Well, no, it's an actual. They've animated. They've made an animated comic of it, and they find Cronon's body.
Yeah.
They revive it with an alchemical manual.
Okay.
And then they travel to a frozen location where there's a giant robot, and they put Cronon's head on it, and then Rasputin appears and tells Cronin, the revived Cronin, that he still has work to do.
Huh.
So that's cool.
I did kind of miss Cronin in this movie, dude.
Yeah, so he was going to come back. He was going to make a
man, I wish Cronin was in this. I wish that scary dude was back.
He was going to come back for the third film.
Right. Okay.
Which unfortunately we didn't get.
Yes, and it's... I guess you're going to get to this in your trivia, but it really... I do remember a lot of rumblings about... Is there going to be a third one? Alright, so why don't you hit us with the trivia for this week?
Alright, so we'll start with the box office.
Okay.
So this film cost about 85 million US to make.
Whoa!
So it's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
It made it all back and then some. It made 168 million at the box office. So essentially double its budget.
Yeah.
It also had the biggest opening of Del Toro's career up to that point.
Okay.
Which is later surpassed by Pacific Rim.
Okay.
However, its receipts dropped off quickly through competition with another comic book movie, The Dark Knight, which was released a week later.
Okay.
Had a big fall off.
Yeah.
Right. So, the production of the film. Okay, so it was announced, I think, pretty much as soon as Hellboy 1 came out.
Okay.
It was apparent Hellboy 1 was a success. Del Toro and Mignola tossed around ideas about what the story would be. At one point, they were going to do Hellboy meets the Universal movie monsters.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Probably good that they... So there was going to meet, like, Frankenstein, the Wolfman. They would have been...
Del Toro's been wanted to do that in his career, and that's how Shape of Water ended up happening, right? And how his deal with Universal fell apart when they didn't want to make Creature from the Black Lagoon the way he wanted to make it. So he's been trying to get to that. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So there you go. No surprises there. They tossed around doing a straight adaptation of one of the comics again. In this case, they wanted to do Almost Colossus.
Okay.
That's where Roger the Homunculus and his brother are introduced.
Okay.
Again, they worked on it a couple of days, wasn't working, so then they decided on doing this original story that tied into their shared recent focus on mythology and folklore. Because Del Toro was making Pan's Labyrinth at the time, and Mignola's Hellboy comics were heading in a more folklorish direction. This film had a much better promotional budget than the previous one, which apparently wasn't advertised very heavily or consistently, including some funny shorts where Hellboy interacts with pop culture phenomena from the period. So he appears on American Gladiator.
Okay.
And the show Ghost Hunters.
Okay.
You can see these on YouTube, they're quite funny.
Okay.
Alright, but why didn't we get Hellboy 3? So over the last 15 years, all the relevant stakeholders, Del Toro, Mignola, and Ron Perlman have all made repeated statements about Hellboy 3. And as was hinted in this film, with the Angel of Death and with the proposed after-credits sequence, they wanted it to be a trilogy from early on. But it just sort of doesn't seem to eventuate. And indeed, the first two kind of Hellboy movies seem to have gotten made off the back of like something that reassured people that this film about a demon man was going to be a success. So, Blade 2, then Pan's Labyrinth. Yeah. Then what happens? It just sort of is kicked along. I mean, Pacific Rim was a big hit. But apparently not reassuring. In 2014, so this is 6 years after Golden Army came out, Del Toro did a Reddit AMA, Ask Me Anything, where he said that he didn't think at that stage that the movie was going to happen. He said he went through every studio, basically every studio, asked for financing. They are not interested. His take on that was, while the first movie made its budget back and a bit of profit, it was really profitable on home media. Video and DVD. And he said that story repeated itself with the second film. It made its money back at the box office, and then some, but was also very, very big on DVD and video. He says, sadly now, from a business point of view, all the studios know that you don't have the safety net of DVD and video anymore. Because by this stage, I guess streaming is starting to take off in 2014. So they view the project as dangerous. This was something I've heard spoken a lot about, actually, that you can't rely on the home media kind of like...
Yeah, absolutely.
Buoying up your film afterwards, but I suppose it must be a concern. So a year later in 2015, Del Toro announced that Legendary Pictures might fund Hellboy 3, so they still want to make it, if Pacific Rim Uprising did well.
Okay.
And again, quote, the hard fact is the movie's going to need about 120 million, and there's nobody knocking on our door to give it to us. Knocking down our door to give it to us, rather. It's a little beyond Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But he dropped out of directing that film. He didn't direct that film, so that agreement fell apart. Then we get the remake, which we'll talk about next week.
Yeah.
Not a success. Ron Perlman is still talking...
And there's still another one. I mean, we've got a Hellboy movie coming out this year, apparently.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's weird that it has become a property that studios want to milk no matter what, no matter how good or bad. And I think I can just see over the next 20 years, the budgets are gonna drop and drop and drop, and we're gonna keep getting Hellboy movies, and they're gonna be like made for like $15 million down the road, and they're just gonna be crappier and crappier, and it's gonna be like Hellraiser.
Oh God, say it isn't so.
Yeah.
Ron Perlman hasn't given up. He's in his 70s. In 2022, he said, "Am I going to do a Hellboy 3? No. I'm 71 fucking years old. But we owe it to the fans. And we should give it to them because it would be an epic conclusion. So Guillermo, if you're reading, I'm not done pounding you to get this fucking thing done." And then again, a couple of months ago in September, he said he would love to play the role again, only if Del Toro is in the driver's seat.
Yeah, of course.
And if they finish the trilogy.
Yeah.
People really clamouring for the conclusion to the Hellboy trilogy? I don't really think so.
Not anymore.
But Ron Perlman wants to do it, and he's willing to get back into shape to do it again at the age of 72.
Wow.
So more power to him. There was also a spin-off proposed.
Okay.
Called Hellboy Silverlance that was going to be about Prince Nuada. Was Prince Nuada a compelling enough character to have a whole spin-off movie made about him? I don't think so. Maybe they were. Maybe they had Marvel money dancing in their imaginations.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Peter Briggs, the screenwriter we mentioned last week, who wrote the original Hellboy screenplay and the Alien vs Predator one, he was contacted to write the script for Universal for this film. It was going to be Abe Sapien was going to be the main character.
That's so it's 2008. So is Iron Man out yet?
No, it's 2010 when this happens.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's real. That's franchise thinking, which is now everything is franchise thinking. I remember James Bond, they used to be like, Michelle Yeoh's going to get a spin-off, or Halle Berry's going to get a spin-off. And it was like these things never materialized. And by 2010, absolutely, I can see franchise dollars.
They were going to bring back Abe. They were going to bring back the Angel of Death.
Yeah.
Hellboy was going to have a supporting role. It was going to be, they just had visions of Sugar Plums and Marvel-type profits.
Yes.
And of course,
as they all are, especially DC.
And of course, it didn't eventuate.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Shall we do our votes?
Yes. Okay. So we don't really need to rate the comics because we rated them last week, but
this comic in particular, I just love. So
this is great. Yeah, and this is a really great one. Don't need to go into it any deeper than that. I guess it's typical. It's really archetypal Hellboy stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Quintessential Hellboy.
Maybe one of the last ones that Mignola drew himself as well. I'm not sure on that. I might just be making that up.
We'll have to check.
Okay, interestingly, the movie.
And this is a tough one because we've been shitting on it.
It's actually a yay for me. I actually laughed quite a lot watching it. It's beautiful, as we mentioned before. It's a bit like... Yeah, it's like the visuals of Pan's Labyrinth. It's really hard to deny how spectacular it is.
This is an auteur at work.
I will say, I think the biggest
gorgeous
slam against it is... I mean, Pan's Labyrinth is about the Spanish Civil War.
Yeah.
What's this movie about? It's
really
not about anything.
The story... This is a problem with the film. Yeah. The story is all over the place.
Yeah.
There don't seem to be really any stakes most of the time.
Yeah.
And it's way
I never had any doubt.
It's way less... It's not moving as quickly. I mentioned last week that the plot of Hellboy 2004 also doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
But it's a ride, and you're not questioning it. Because you're just rolling from... Because the pace is good, it's from scene to scene, there's all this crazy stuff, you're into it. This one, it's got less energy, so you're less caught up in what's going on. Instead, you're just going, why are we in a market?
Yes, because we want to look at the market.
Yeah, well,
a lot of the things are, why are we here? Because we want to look at this amazing thing.
Because Guillermo Del Toro loves puppets and crazy stuff. Yeah. And homages to the 80s, I guess.
And he's got a Pinocchio movie that came out this last year.
Right, exactly.
On Netflix,
and
right?
And, the other thing, as I said earlier, it's very kind of... The story's also very... The character interaction is also very superficial. The people's conflict... Liz and Hellboy, as I said, are fighting about how... that he can't keep his room clean, and she blew a door off a secure vault.
Yeah,
in rage that he didn't keep his room clean, and it all just feels a bit surface level, and there's no depth. There's no themes going on. What's the theme of this movie?
Yeah,
the last film had a theme.
Well, I think even if you squint and say the theme is their acceptance by the public, that flip-flops,
No,
as I said.
Because it's not. Because they abandon the BPRD and the public.
Yeah.
Abandoning the BPRD is abandoning the public. The Angel of Death thing says, Nuada says to Hellboy, you should be on my side, because these people hate you. But they didn't hate him yesterday. They just hate him today. I suppose to give rhetorical force to that argument.
Yeah.
It's all just very superficial. I'm not impressed with it.
And yet, I'm giving it a yay.
I'm also giving it a yay.
Yeah. 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 Now, will I rewatch it? I don't... I'm more likely to rewatch the first one than this one.
Agreed.
For sure, but you can't deny the level of craft that's gone into this thing. Yeah.
That was the most qualified yay ever. All right.
Yeah.
Adaptation.
Nay.
Yeah.
I think this one's pretty far from the comics. I think the scenes, especially the troll market scene, and Hellboy's personality with that cackling laugh at Manning, his ridiculing of him is just not like the Hellboy that I know. I don't think, if you read the comics and you like them, I don't think you would go into this movie and say this is like those comics.
I also agree with Nay. Pan's Labyrinth 2 is what this film really feels like.
Yes, absolutely.
It's much, much more Del Toro's vision than Mignola's. It's got all his hallmarks. We've got a fish romance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Clockwork stuff. Crazy markets. Yeah. Superficially, you could say, the Hellboy comics do go in a more folklore-ish direction. And there are some things like Kraus, which are present here.
Yeah.
But it's just surface level.
Yes.
Again, it really feels much more like Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah. Okay. Please like, review, rate, subscribe.
Well done.
Please join us on Facebook. Please join our Patreon.
Please join our Patreon.
Pretty please. Next week, as threatened, we're going to go to Hellboy 2019. We've never done 3 in a row. We've done a lot of 2 in a rows, or a few 2 in a row.
I just like Hellboy comics so much that I'm very happy to do that element
so
of it.
we'll read The Wild Hunt. Now, this movie's definitely based on
The Wild Hunt
and a couple of others. But the current editions of The Wild Hunt actually say, the basis of the new Hellboy movie on the cover. There's a little sticker.
Much like Seed of Destruction does.
Yes. And I think it was based on a few other bits and pieces too, like Hellboy in Mexico. I'm not sure which Hellboy in Mexico, because there's a few Mexico stories. And Darkness Calls and The Storm and the Fury. I never even heard of that one. I think it must be a pretty recent one. So anyway, we'll definitely hit Wild Hunt.
Yep.
Maybe...
And as for the others, we'll find out next week.
Yeah, it just depends how much we feel like waiting. Okay.
Bye.